Okay, so I'm mostly going to be talking about the build for Bel'veth that I run. This is for Bel'veth Jungle, and just Bel'veth Jungle. The builds for support aren't too interesting. Build an even shroud, okay? And then for the soul lanes, I simply don't have enough experience. So surely there's a Chinese or Korean one trick that you could watch, and then just copy the first two items they build and kind of get it going from there. But me personally, I've gone through a bunch of different phases with Bel'veth where I tried different things, and also recently I tried to do different builds based on like if I'm invading or not. And not in a one trick sense, not like iPad playing Teemo, building life steal and stupid stuff like that. It's like I'm doing normal fundamental paths with different builds, and then these builds like don't equate to actual value at a reasonable time. For example, one of the builds I dipped into was something like this, like Bork into Radiant before the Radiant nerf, and this build was fine. This build was fine before the changes to Kraken Slayer, and at the earlier parts of the season, you didn't have to farm as much, so it's like that build worked out. But after the changes to Radiant, nerf to it generally, taking away ability haste and HP and stuff, then this build like is just bad. Like because with Bel'veth, she's very much a champion that I'm finding is you own at three items, and then four items is like when you take the game, at least if you're playing it properly or if things are going right. I don't care how this champion plays when you're like even or behind because that's like not a game state that I want to be in for the most part. I know how to play when even, but it's not like I'm going even in every single game, like 20 games in a row. It's not how we're doing it on Bel'veth. Is you're like a Zergling. You take the game by the balls, you know, you just drag it forward. Say, come on down this way. For that reason, I think Kraken Slayer is by far, in a way, the first best item. It is so hard to beat this bad boy in the first slot. And part of the reason for that is that it builds out a Noon Quiver. Now, Noon Quiver is 30 AD, 15% attack speed, and then your attacks deal additional damage to minions and monsters. So with that, you're clearing the jungle faster, a lot faster. Without the Noon Quiver, good luck doing an objective by yourself. It takes too long. Whereas with Noon Quiver, a proper John, or even a 3 camp into full clear into reset, you can do the dragon. But without it, you can't. Or it's too slow. Or you're spending too much time. If you're spending too much time doing this, you're not spending enough time doing that. And the that is usually an attack, an invade, a gank, some sort of play. So Noon Quiver gives you speed, and that's a very important part for Bel'veth is the speed at every stage of the game. Speed and then the ability to contend. So with the first item being Kraken Slayer, once it's completed, you get 40 attack damage, 30% attack speed, and then 20% crit chance, and your Qs can crit as well. So sometimes you get bonus damage on your Q. You can think of it like that. And every third hit deals an additional physical damage that repeats on the same target, increasing the damage dealt. So this also synergizes with how Bel'veth's passive will work. The same target that you hit, you build up true damage against them. So with Kraken Slayer, you'll be building up physical damage as well. Whenever this was magic damage, it was slightly more overpowered. You had more burst in the old Kraken Slayer, but this is how it works now, making it more of a balanced item, to be honest, because the PTA Kraken Bork was about the strongest Bel'veth's ever been. That's when you could go like 14 kills by like 14 minutes pretty easily, in my opinion. I really like that version of Bel'veth, but yeah, I see why they nerfed it. So with Kraken Slayer on completion, it's following the same fundamental rule of Noon Quiver giving you speed at everything you do. Kraken Slayer increases the clear speed and then also makes you faster at killing the champion once you're on top of them, because whenever you're on top of them, you need to kill them fast or you have a bad time. And then the second item that I'm going after that is the Black Cleaver almost every single game. The Black Cleaver versus other second items, like Black Cleaver giving us AD, HP, ability haste, and then on hit damage and movement speed. That's how you have to think about this. It's another on hit item, but it gives us HP. And HP is a super important stat to have on your second item. But if you go too defensive, like I was saying with the Radiant second, then you don't have enough damage. So this needs to be a mix of an AD and an HP item. So we also have Stride Breaker as an option to do pretty much the same thing. Hello, there's the Stride Breaker, but it's 200 gold more, and the stats are slightly skewed. So we get attack speed. We don't need more attack speed at that point. We get 10 more AD, which is fine. That's good. But then we lose 100 HP, and that's a big problem. To get extra utility in the slow, Bel'veth doesn't need that slow. Does she use the slow well? Sure, sure, she uses that slow very well. But it's not extra damage. What Bel'veth needs is all these things to combo together. At least in my opinion, this is like the most consistent for me. So, Stridebreaker is not a bad item, but it's also not what I end up going. So with Black Cleaver as your second item, getting 30 ability haste, it's going to put your W and E on lower cooldowns too. It doesn't affect the Q cooldown and doesn't do anything to your ulti either. So it might feel weird investing into ability haste, but having the E up after you go in and out of a fight can be useful. Having it up faster every time you're clearing is also useful, but we're mostly buying this for the HP, AD, and then dealing more damage with it. It's pretty simple. And then after this, my third item, I'm still looking for durability as I go, so I end up getting Radiant Virtue. What Radiant Virtue gives me is 350 HP, 30 armor and MR, 10 ability haste, which at that point we don't really care about the ability haste. And then upon casting your ultimate, you gain max health, and then so does your allies. So this gives you about 200 to 300 HP on an ulti, and then also gives your allies about 150 HP each, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then whenever you complete this too, you get the mythic passive of gaining 75 HP for each um, epic item. So then both of these items combined will give you like what, 140 HP. So you can look at this item as something like a 480 HP item, but then when you ulti, it's like 600, maybe 700 HP, and then add 30 armor in 30 armor and magic resist to that. Like you can't beat that for 2,700 gold. It's like a Warmogs in disguise in a way. A Warmogs that gives you 30 armor and MR, which you're gonna want. You're gonna want. I forgot. At this point too is when I build my boots. Sometime in between Kraken Slayer or Black Cleaver. When do you build them? It depends, but it's basically always Merc Treads or the Ninja Tabby. Like Berserker Greaves can increase your DPS, but if you can get Berserker Greaves, you've probably already won the game, so whatever. Do whatever you want, but in real games, in my real life, this is what I really have to build to really win games rather than have some funny damage as I go. Because like really, if you want some funny damage, listen, Rage Blade is the nuts. Don't build Berserker Greaves, just build no boots and get to Rage Blade, and then, you're winning. So whenever you build the Radiant, it locks you out of something like a Rage Blade, which is a very good late game item. It is very, very good on Bel'veth. Um, so what I end up going from there after the Radiant is either a Serrated Dirk item. So we have pretty good options with this. We have Prowler's Claw, we have Collector, we have Serpent's Fang, and those are pretty much our good options. I end up going Serpent's Fang quite often. It's pretty cheap compared to the other options, and then very, very useful at assassinating the right target, particularly like say a Kaisa, or even the Enchanter supports as you go. But mainly we're looking as for a damage item for our fourth item here. After Kraken Slayer, Black Cleaver, Boots, Radiant. If you go another durability item, then it's too slow and you don't deal enough damage. So you can either go Serpent's Fang or you can go a Last Whisper item, which would be Shirelda's or Mortal Reminder, which more often than not I find myself getting the Mortal Reminder. Because with Shirelda's, it's 45 AD. That's fine. 30 armor pin is like where we need the juice come late game. 20 ability haste, that's fine. Slowing on damaging abilities, that's fine. Like these things do something, but we're really about that armor pin. And then all this building out of longswords is very nice as a fourth item because you never know how much gold you're getting in the late game. Are you winning the barons? Are you getting the dragons? Are you getting your camps? Are you shut out your jungle, etc., etc.? But futures market can also curve this so that you can kind of guarantee that you at least get to the last whisper, and that can help you contend. And then with Mortal Reminder, obviously, if they have a reasonable amount of healing, then we get this one instead because these share the same stats. You get 45 Okay, this one has 5 more AD. Whatever, you get like 40 AD and then 30% armor pen. The critical strike chance or the ability haste, either one is not really that important. It's just about what the passive of the item does. You obviously want to get the good one, but it is what it is if you get one or the other. Okie doke. So this is like the most standard and like common build that I run. And all the other items, yeah, like you can build them, but this is like what I rock with. And then why do I rock with it? Because like speed with Kraken Slayer, AD plus durability, into complete durability with boots plus radiant, so that come mid game, you can fight without having like random stuff one shot you or have the flexibility of going in and out, and then a damage item to round everything out. Once I'm like level 16, it's time to end the game. Let's attack the enemy. This doesn't require like outrageous attacks. It doesn't require outrageous gameplay. It doesn't require outrageous mistakes from the enemy, and that's what I really like about it. You might think it's a more defensive build, but it's kind of what I leverage against the enemy when they don't do anything. If the enemy doesn't make mistakes, more so if they play too safe, then there's nothing to attack. So, what's the point of having, like, say, extra attack speed? Let's say if I have Kraken, Bork, and Rageblade or some, bunch of attack speed items. What's the point of having all that if the enemy is under turret? Whereas if they're under turret with this build, I could probably dive them. With my team, even if bad things happen, I can probably dive them. Whereas with attack speed and stuff, it's like I'm just perma waiting for my entire team to do entirely everything. Which you can do that in some team comps. Let's say I have Ornn top, Lissandra mid, Alistar support. Sure, I can go mostly on hit. That's fine. But that's, you know, this is generally like what slots in the most. So, yep, that's what I build on Bel'veth. If you have any other questions about the other items, then you can leave them, but I don't particularly feel like going into like the minutia of all these other items because they're probably just slightly bad. So, yep, hope that helps.